Yeah, we're going to be carrying on from where we left off last time, but we've made quite good progress in the last few weeks. So I think we're in a pretty good spot now. But before we dive into anything too deep, I will share what we've been doing so far, as well as I was going to go over our animation style reference. So yeah, what I'll do is I'm just going to be studying some animation reference before we go much further. So this is going to be kind of that next step where we're now actually starting to add more in-betweens. And so especially on these moments where there's less action, I definitely want to make it feel true to some of my references, being mostly Akira and Ghost in the Shell. So I've just picked up some material from those movies. And I'm just going to be studying through those to kind of have a better understanding of how the actual animation style is working. That way it'll help me inform, as I'm animating, like how to simplify things, where to add more complexity in terms of like how much fidelity there is and texture in the action. Because at the end of the day, I still want it to look like it could have been part of one of these movies, at least in segments, and then there might be a little bit more creative interpretation in other areas as well. But yeah, other than that, I think we'll start just diving in and looking at some clips. It is also worth noting that some of the material we're about to see is from a quite violent movie. So this is Akira, for anyone who hasn't seen it before. And so it is quite violent. It's an 18 plus. So, you know, some of the material might feel a little bit sensitive in here, but it's merely just so I can study the animation, so I have a better idea of how to approach it in my own shot. So yeah, I'm going to be looking through some of these clips, and yeah, we'll just be breaking down a little bit of how it works, which then from there we'll move straight into the shot itself. But yeah, I'm just going to be having a look through this now. I'll probably be vocalizing what I'm seeing, just so everyone has an idea of what I'm thinking about as I'm studying the shots, and then hopefully I can refer back to this at any point if I'm like, does it feel like it's part of this or not? And if the answer is no, then we can break down why and address those things. So yeah, I'm just gonna be playing through some of these shots now. I have muted the sound as well, also because some of it might be quite violent in terms of language, so just to keep it simple. But I quite liked this shot. A lot of the pieces of material I have found from Akira are like these more mundane moments where it's more them doing more natural organic things, just kind of shifting around, doing their day-to-day lives. But I kind of like that stuff because there's so many different ways that you can approach a shot like that, and just from an animation perspective, I would like to understand where they're choosing to keep details and where they're choosing to simplify. Like you can see, it's very much the style itself. So it's all on 2s to start with. So that's already good to know. And you can see even by the spacing, if I look at his arms, it's coming down. We have an ease out, hit a break down, straight into the ease in, and then it just releases. So it's quite tight, the spacing. So again, it's all favoring clarity. And you can see the ups and downs are quite minimal. Even this little weight shift he does, it feels quite isolated. There's a little bit of change in the spine, but not much. You mostly see it in here as he does the little twist with his foot and he's pressing the cigarette into the floor. You see his hips twisting a little bit in there. But even then, it does feel quite simple. And you are still seeing the feet peeling off the ground, and you're seeing them ease out. But then we're hitting shapes quite distinctly. Even the spacing as he comes down through here, you see it's very distinct. They have these holds, drop down, holds, drop down. There's like 2 in-betweens, and then he's back in the hold. This was another one for some weight shifting. So again, very profile, very graphic. And you see there's a little bit of a hold in here. We're still having these in-betweens. But it does almost like slow down. It almost feels quite linear through this part. And then as he turns, he's still leading with the foot, but it all kind of leads out together. Which, if we're exaggerating style, typically you emphasize lead and follow. But in this case, it feels quite natural. It feels like the foot is leading the action, but even the timing of it. See how it all hits the same pose at the same time, and then it all goes to the left at the same time. And then heel goes to the right at the same time. And then you get a little bit of that shift in the back leg coming back as well. A little bit of follow through on his weight. But in general, it's actually quite stiff. That kind of is part of the style, it's part of the charm in a way, where everything kind of moves at a similar timing. There's not too many offsets. So that would definitely go against my intuition as an animator to try and do that now. But maybe there's a level of that I could involve to make it feel a little bit more hand-drawn. And you see some of these movements in here as well, even just like the hand is always moving left to right. And you are getting these little twists on Canada there. This is kind of going left to right. I'm just looking at these little back steps as well on the screen right guy here. Yeah, it's quite punchy and tight on the spacing of the feet. So we don't want to be going too soft on the limbs, in other words. We keep them more distinct. Even there, you see how those back feet, see how they go on Canada there. So it goes 1, 2, literally just pops into position, and then the other one pops into position. And then there's a little ease in on the body. It's quite interesting. It's almost like the root does quite linear motions, but then the arms and legs kind of like pop into positions. And then this stuff will be quite good for his jacket as well. Like on my character as well. She has a jacket very similar to this. So there'll be some good reference there to see how that flaps in the wind if we want to add any texture, especially at the beginning when she's high up in the buildings. Might be good to have a little bit of wind and jacket texture, which is also kind of like a fun anime trope anyway. So that could be cool. But there, see that hand, how it kind of holds through and then bonk, comes down. And even as the arms come through here, yeah, it's very tight. So we have one ease out, then we get the arc straight into the breakdown, then 2 frames to ease in. Now, is that on 1s or 2s? That's the other question. Interesting. So all of this section as it goes slower through here is on 2s, but then as we come through from here to here, this is on a 1. And then it goes back onto 2s. So this is 2, 1, 2, 2, and then 2 and 1. So there's very variable frame rates, which is interesting. Like they're choosing where to add it for timing and texture, but they're not locking in a certain frame rate, which actually works in my favor as well. And I just wanted to see like how he's turning and that kind of thing as well. So as he turns his body, is there much lead and follow? No. Literally like 2 keys. It's on 2s. And within 2 frames, he's over the other side near enough. There's a little bit of lead in the turn, and then the body kind of carries on through, but not much. But then you can see the little thing that Canada in the bottom left here does with his hand. So he anticipates up, then he hits into the brush. Now he's on 3s, which is interesting. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That was a 2. That's a 3. So there's like variable 2s and 3s on the characters in here, which is interesting. And again, it's because they're not moving too much. There's not a lot of texture, so they're adding where there's more fidelity that happens with the hands, they add it onto the 2s. But then when there's not, then it's just the body doing these very slow shifts. So they don't need to add all this texture. So they slow down the frame rates. And then I wanted to see this as well for the walking. I mean, they have a lot of chest swaying here as well. But see how this is interesting. So see how the foreground is on 2s so that you don't get the foot sliding. but the background is on ones. So at no point do you feel like the characters are sliding on the floor, but essentially the whole foreground is sliding. You see there? How the whole thing is sliding. It's quite interesting. And then you can see some of these movements in here on his arms, for instance. This feels definitely more like reference because of the way it's quite linear and it's quite smooth. And then, like, see how it's really interesting because, like, these movements in here feel a little bit more organic as they're slowly easing in and out. But again, it feels quite linear still. And then as you have this turn, see how quickly he changes. Goes down, then twist. See that change? That's huge. And everything kind of hits into the same pose again. Obviously, this is very old now. This was back in the 80s, this film. But they it's interesting because like this is very much ahead of its time in terms of animation. This inspired many animations even to this day. But it's interesting just seeing the execution of it, and it's still a lot of it's still very pose to pose. But then we've got some interesting action in here now. So this is on ones. Then it goes on to a 2 here. So see how he's suspending in the air. So then it holds on the 2. Then it goes on to a 1, then a 2. That's on 2s, back into 1s. So like it's varying all the time, in other words. So into the contact where it needs the fidelity, it goes onto the 1s, holds in the 2s. Oh, there's a little texture in there where it's vibrating. So that's actually on 1s. Then we're holding on the 2. This is all on 2s. In this bit here as we ease out. Then it goes on to 1 for the impact. And then as we hold in here, it goes back onto 2s. Which is really cool. And there is some nice lead and follow in here as well. You can kind of see how the arms suspend as the body continues to rotate back. But it's very pose-centric. Yeah, this stuff can get a little bit violent in here. But I just wanted to see how some of it's actually moving. Like, this stuff is quite interesting, seeing how she reacts. I just want to see the spacing on the arms. So everything hits pretty hard. And you're getting a bit of follow through on the hands. But yeah, very broad spacing on what the arms are doing. And then I'm assuming this felt like it was on 2s. Yeah, this is on 2s. Even the background is still on 1s though, which is interesting. You can see that background texture still sliding. It's really interesting. And this is great for line quality reference as well. I just want to see how he shifts his weight as well. There's a little beat in there of his head coming up first. Then as he does lean into it, so there is some lead on his chest as he pushes away. Then he's leaning in, there's a bit of follow through on the leg. But then the settle is very pose to pose. This stuff is great for spacing as well, so look at his hands. On the screen right guy, he grabs the book, little antic there for 1 frame. Then anticipates again. Big spacing as he lets go. But his whole body is going back and forth quite abruptly. I just want to see how the screen right guy also leads. So everything kind of comes up. Getting a little lead in the chest, and then there's a little follow through. And again, the spacing on the hand is quite broad. And overshoots, then again, all the settles are very linear. They're not easing in, which is quite, and it just stops abruptly. So it kind of makes it feel a little bit robotic in the settles. Just skimming through some of this stuff if there's anything interesting. I know there's a part where he jumps near here, I think. There we go. Oh, did I skim it? There we go. I accidentally missed it. I just want to see the spacing here. So he's running, and this is on 2s. This is on a little 1 there for the antic. That's on 1s. Then back into 2s. This is all on 2s. Very pose to pose. Little on 2s. And then he gets caught. Yeah, so I think there's enough information in there to figure out how we could potentially execute this. So essentially what I concluded from that is broad spacing on arms and legs. There is some lead and follow in timing, but it's quite close together, so we don't want to exaggerate too much. I already have a little bit in my blocking, but that's worth noting that we can also, in our ease-ins and outs, they're either very distinct and happen over very few frames, and if we get very close to our end pose, the spacing is quite linear. So I'll experiment with it, and if it doesn't feel right for whatever reason, I mean, naturally it's going to feel a little bit wrong because the execution is against the principles in some ways, because we should be easing in out of everything to an extent. There shouldn't really be linear anything, but in their case they are adding some linear eases. So yeah, that'll be something that'll go against my intuition a little bit, but it'll be fun to experiment with. So before we go any further, what I will do is I'll play the blocking version that we have so far, and then we can jump into actually blocking out the shot. And by blocking, I would say we're now moving into blocking plus officially. So everything has been established. We have our main poses, we have our main breakdowns. Now we're starting to add the in-betweens. And because of the style itself, there'll still be some nuances that we want to add later, but I think we'll be able to put a lot of this down on 2s and variable frame rates, but more often than not, it'll be on 2s. To most of the sections that will be moving forward. Most of it's near enough fleshed out now. So yeah, we're at that stage for adding in-betweens. So that's what we're doing today. I was going to do this I want to kind of just go through this section by section the same way that I did with blocking. So we are going to just simply be going through one section, adding the in-betweens, next section, adding the in-betweens, and then we can revisit later to like finesse them. But I want to try and get everything into a decent spot. As we know from a couple of streams ago, this shot or this section is a little bit more technical, but the setup is already done now, so in theory it should work okay. But fingers crossed it's not too complex as we're going through this. But already from the very beginning here, there isn't a whole lot happening, right? We just have, if I were to just mute our camera, we can also hide the TV because we don't need the TV right now. Let me just bring over our perspective view so we have that to work with. And I'm just going to lock off our camera. so it doesn't move, just so it's easier to finesse and see what's actually happening. So as we're going through this section here, I have this ease in right now, and you can see there's very little movement. It's literally just a moving hold. Now, we don't want to change, we don't want, again, it's such a subtle movement, and think about it this way. If you had a character this small in your piece of paper, and you were drawing this, and you had to add in-betweens to allow the character to ease in, it's going to be really like pinpoint accurate to try and get that line to perfectly ease in every time. So more often than not, this is why sometimes they may even resort to using linear spacing as it eases in. And I think it kind of has this charm to it, which makes it feel a little dated, a little bit older. So I do kind of want to sit into that, because the render style in the end of it will look this way as well. It's supposed to look reminiscent of something that was made like 20 years ago. So I kind of want it, this is literally just a big love letter to the style. So I do kind of want to, in some ways it's going to be a little bit, like, for lack of a better term, a little bit janky, but that's kind of intentional. So we'll play around with it, and then yeah, we'll see how it feels. Again, it's going to be going a little bit against my intuition, but in some ways it makes it slightly easier as well to animate, because you're not having to track your spacing perfectly, because the kind of charm is that it isn't perfect. So that'll be interesting. Do I have any tips on how to fully understand the graph editor? I'm very good with other parts of my workflow, except polishing. Yeah, so my general advice, I would say, for using the graph editor, at least the way I like to work, is because everything, you have to think about your character like, I treat them like a tree. That's how I try to describe them. In other words, if I move the trunk of the tree, all the branches are going to move as well. So it's really important in my workflow that I polish and refine, starting with the root of the character and then working my way outwards. So if my rotations, for instance, or my roots aren't cleaned up, then that's going to break my spacing and my polish when I go into the spine. And vice versa, once I've done the spine, if I haven't cleaned that up, then that's going to then impact what the head does, and so on and so forth. So what I like to do is decompartmentalize everything so that I'm not overcomplicating everything. So in my workflow, when I'm using the graph editor, I'll be looking at, first of all, I'd look at the root and I would break down what's the most important, or like what channel is contributing the most amount of movement to the character. So in other words, if they're jumping up and down, of course your TY is going to be doing a lot of the work. So I prioritize cleaning up my spacing on the TY first, and then I would then find the next priority, and then I would do the same for rotations. But it also depends on what's leading your action, right? Because if you're leading with your rotation, you want to probably want to clean up the rotation first, because that will then indicate what the translate does. So there's a little bit of method that is involved, and what's the word? Going in with a plan as to what you're prioritizing, rather than just being like, I'm going to pick this curve and I'm just going to start cleaning this up and then see if it looks better. Like, you can be a little bit more vigilant in how you approach your polish. There are lots of other techniques you can use for polish which are quite useful, which are known as like the copy paste method. So in other words, if you know that if you want to add some like fleshiness to your animation, for instance, if you have someone jumping up and down, you can maybe copy the up and down of your root and you can paste that onto the chest so that it translates slightly up and down, and you can offset the timing and then scale it down, and it gives you that little bit of overlap and follow through and just makes it a little bit more fleshy. There's things like that you can use, so there are techniques that can be very useful for that. If you have a joint, like a chain of joints, so like you have some hair and you want it to be flapping like in a nice sine wave, you can use there's like a time offsetter here. So in Animbot it's called time offsetter stagger. So you see these curves in here, you can select all these curves and then bring it along, and it slightly creates this ripple effect, which is really cool. So there's lots of different techniques you can use. Just one thing to add to that as well, one thing that I find particularly useful is, for me, I struggle where I struggled with trying to associate my spacing and my timing together. And what I mean by that is you have two types of timing, don't you? You have your rhythm of your shots, which is your overall timing, but then you also have timing in your spacing. And what I mean by that is how long are you easing out for and how long are you easing in for? So it's not just how tight your spacing is, but it's the duration in which both of those take, which is the time part of it. Now, if you have a key on frame 1 and frame 2, and then you have another one on frame 6, there's very different numbers of time in there, isn't there, between your keys? Like there's in one key there's no change, and in the other one there's 5 frames in between. So when you're looking at your spacing, how do you picture the amount of in-betweens that happen between frame 2 and frame 6? So that's the tricky part. And one thing that I did to simplify that process for me is when I move into Spline and I'm refining in the graph editor, I near enough have everything on 2s. Like before I hit Spline, I bake it on 2s, put it back into stepped, and then I clean up my arcs and my curves via everything on 2s. That way I know that every key that I'm tweaking the spacing, I know there's only ever 1 frame in between it, which means that it's a lot easier to track how your spacing is clean, and you're not having to worry about how many frames there are in between your keyframes. So that's personally how I like to work, and I've taught this way for years, and it doesn't work for everyone, but a lot of people do pick it up and they enjoy it, and I think some of them still use it to this day, so that's really cool. It's glad to know that it works for other people too. But we'll be using a little bit of that with this. The only difference is this is much more because of the style and to the variable frame rates that I'll be using, so it won't just be on 2s, it'll be on 3s, it'll be on 1s as well. There's going to be a level of feeling involved a little bit more in it, and the spacing, there'll be some parts of it which be very deliberate spacing, and other parts of it which are kind of just blending, because again, that's part of the style. So this is going to be a little bit slightly against my workflow, but I have an idea of how I can approach it. So yeah, that'll be interesting. But all I'll say is take how I'm animating this way with a pinch of salt, because it's not my conventional workflow, or it's the same workflow, but the approach to it and the execution of it is different. So yeah, just do keep that in mind if you're like, oh, this is how he does it normally. It's not normally this way, in other words. But yeah, just keep that in mind. So for instance, I have these keys here. This is when we first start, and what I'm going to do is, because it's there's not a lot of motion happening in this part, I'm actually going to put this on 3s. So, and I'm just going to ease in. So 3 frames later, I'm just going to go into Tween Machine, and all of this is just blending linearly. So we're just going halfway between each time. So all of this right now is on 3s. And it's literally just blending in. Now, I can offset some of this stuff. I don't want it to be entirely pose to pose. But because of, again, I'm thinking of the mindset of if I was having to animate this in 2D, I know that there's going to be some difficult parts to clean up the spacing. So I've just gone through here, for instance, and I've slightly offset the elbow. Now the elbow kind of holds, and then it comes up later. You see that? So it delays, then the elbow comes up. I might do a similar thing with the head. Maybe we can have the scope and everything slightly come in here. Slightly tilt her head into it. And then I'll have this ease in. Now let's get a little bit of lead on the head. And I feel like now the timing of the elbow and the head is the exact same. See how they both ease out at the same time? that is something that the style was doing, and it's really counterintuitive to me because it feels robotic, right? There's not, your body doesn't do that. Like you don't stand like this, and you don't just go her, where your hand and your head are always synchronized in their timing. It's very unnatural. So yeah, that's going to be a tricky part to kind of get used to. I'm going to see how it feels if I slightly offset it. We're talking by like 1 key. So in other words, if I just delay the elbow again, so it remains down for longer, then it eases in like that. Maybe that's enough. And then she's going to shoot. Now, this is going to be a very fast recoil through this section. So, I've got to be quite specific with the timing and spacing of this. So I'm actually going to have everything ease out. I'm going to have the arm ease in early so that we get the fire coming from the gun first, then the rest of the body comes in. I might even be able to get the barrel to slightly animate as well, which maybe I'll do the gun animation later. I'll just focus on her first. Get a little bit of the head coming down. Then the shoulder kicks in. Then it pulls her back. So then we have this recoil here. So this section, I could put it on 2s here, but then as we settle back down, I may want to put this section on 1s. So it hits, holds here, comes back down on the 1. So the arm's going to drop down earlier. Then that's the arm dropping in. This elbow, just need to fix this. Now, I do want to maybe slightly have her body go slightly back here. And then her body can lean in a little bit. I just want to get a little bit of countering on the root. Just got to fix the elbow spacing. There you go. Now, this is where I need to have her body begin to lean back in. This elbow is getting too high again. So this is that spacing that just feels a little bit awkward, where it goes linearly down. So I do want to see if I can just clean some of this up. Now, I'm not sure why her body comes back here again. Feels a bit counterintuitive. and it makes it harder to read. So I'm going to take this key. I'm just going to allow it to continue to ease in. And then just fixing the head spacing. That down here. So I think it's in her spine. Yeah. And then this is an antic, I think. No. I want to get a little bit more settle in this part here. So I'm just going to add a key. And just allow the head to follow through a little bit there. And then I'm going to keep this on the 2s in here. And then this needs to be on a 3 as we're easing in again. That feels a bit better. So the recoil and the settle. Some very subtle offsets in here. Now, I'm just going to unmute the camera here because I think, well, the whole thing is revolving at this point and it's going to be changing constantly. So I need to make sure that within each pose, I'm not getting carried away with working from this angle because it is changing. So at this section here, let's unmute the camera and then mute it again. So now I have this position here that I know we're now working from. Because the whole thing is constantly rotating, so that's the tricky part as well through this section. So we'll save that. Now there was this part in here as well, where there's a long beat in here where nothing's happening. So if I just delete this key, there's a long beat in here where I remember saying a couple of streams ago, I was like, oh, there's a part in here where nothing's really happening, but I'm hearing these accents in the music. So we're hearing this bum 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 bum. Do you hear that? Ding 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 ding. So I kind of wanted to add something in there, and I thought maybe we can engage a little bit more with the sniper somehow. So she fires it, and then I thought we have all these components on the actual sniper itself. So I was thinking, what could I do? How could she interact with the sniper in a way that's kind of interesting? That would just make it feel a bit more tactile and goes to the music, and then it goes into the part where she gets up and does her thing. So yeah, sorry if you can hear the alarm here. Oh, it looks like you can't. I'm just checking the input. I think we're good. So when she does bum 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 bum, I was thinking that her right arm, which is supporting her forearm, can like lock in or like pull something out. And there are these parts on the side of the weapon. The only thing is with that, it does mean that I'm gonna have to animate the geometry simultaneously with her, which I can do. I've just got to come up with some ideas. So we have her right arm. I'm just checking what geometry we actually have, because I could have her like dial something, so she could go bum bum dun dun and like smack it ding 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 ding. That could be quite cool, because there's this, you won't really see it, but there's like a little thing on the side here. So here, this little sound, we can add something. So maybe I can have her hand. At this point, we can take it off of her arm. This is the other thing that's tricky, is because of the distance of where it is. Oops. I accidentally moved the camera. How do I change that back? Delete that. There we go. This is why you always lock your cameras, guys. So, yeah, you can see how far away everything is from the other arm right now, and I'm clearly breaking her shoulder. So, we need to slightly compensate some of that, I reckon. So I can bring this shoulder back. I'll probably have to twist her chest to bring everything a bit closer together. And then I can bring her neck back. Something like this. And then this hand has a little bit more room now that interacts with the gun. So I can have her hand come over and it can do a little like twist of the dial or something. Can fix her shoulder a little bit. And then we'll just find some hand poses. I have a library here to play with, so that'll give us something to start with. And then it's a little bit more like a fist. So something like that. So I could start off here. She goes, dug, dug. Yeah, so she can crank it back. So already at this point here, I can already have that hand going into position. So her spine, her neck, and her head can already begin to blend. Again, the spacing is going to be quite punchy and tight. I'm going to have that hand already in position near enough. And then I'm already going to have this position, this key happen here. And then on this accent, she can twist the gun. Should crank the actual weapon. And then so on this one here, she's going to twist it around. She's going to bump the side. I was trying to think, do I have her, because I could have her, she cranks it like this, then I was going to come out and smack it. So she comes out, she goes duh, 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 duh. So that's already two main beats in there. So on this beat here, she's twisting her arm this way and smacking the side. It's very quick, like the whole beat is bum 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 bum. So, you know, we've got to be very, we can't have too broad a range of motion. Then another one here. This is the in-between. Just clearing the silhouette. And then we'll add all the little connectivity parts as we're going through. I'll see how this feels, but I have a feeling we just may want to change a little, like the positions of some of this stuff. Just so it feels more distinct. Oops. And then yeah, because then we have that next beat is the barrel. So I can change when that barrel timing happens as well. So in here, this is when it can come out. I do feel like there's still some extra texture is like needed in here. These parts here, I have them going to the side. You actually do see them pop out in perspective view, but you don't see them in camera because the camera is flat to the sniper. So I need to change the angle at which these come out. It could be that they slide down. There's lots of different ways I can approach it. But they don't need to happen at this part early. They're too early right now. So I think here is where they should happen. So I'm going to delete this and bring this later. Same for these parts here. These feel too early. Maybe when it twists, these pop out or something. So let's have a look. So this part here, I'm going to have them slide outwards. So they twist. Just trying to find the right position where it's going to read. Maybe somewhere here. I'm going to slightly delay them. That already looks better. And then I can delete this stuff. And then these little cylinders in here, this is where these can pop out. Oops. That should have been further back. So these guys. These can pop out here. So This is where these get knocked. Now I could push them forward. So they come up. And then maybe they can fan out or something. I'm just playing around, I'm experimenting. I'm just trying to make it feel as mechanical and transformative as I can. Oops, sorry. You have to stop that there. There's my alarm. That already feels like there's more going on though. The only thing is there's a lot of different circles there that just make it a bit complex because we have this inner circle in here, this barreling part. So I'm tempted to just delete this bit. That's how that looks. Yeah, I think that's cool. And then we'll just see how that looks. Let me just unmute that. And then lock the camera. I just want to see how this actually plays now. Yeah, there's a lot of different parts going on in there. I'm just trying to think it. I don't want to make the shapes too complex. Otherwise, you just don't have a clue what's going on. So in here, I'm now wondering if we can simplify some of this stuff in this beat. So maybe in here, as it begins to pull up. Here, so this could be where it slots in. Don't know what happened there, that's strange. Now this is easing in, and then this is where we'll snap back in. And then these guys, this is where this can snap back into position. Because now the barrels come in, we could suggest that maybe those parts need to pop out for the barrel to slot in, and then that's when these parts can slot back into place as well. So now they can go in, and then they'll slide in. There you go. So now when we get to this part, we're just reading the main components. And then maybe this biopod part needs to flap this way at this point. And then as it gets sucked in, oh, there's a weird decimal key there. That's strange. I don't like decimal point frames. Go away. There we go. And then that's when that'll all go in. I'm not sure why that key. We got another stray key on these guys. Delete that. It's working better. There's the transformation part needs to, it is like working better. I still feel like what the arm is doing needs to do a little bit more. And then some like more connectivity, a little bit more like punchy accents happening on her body that's connecting all of it together as well will really help. But we had that dun 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 dun, and I feel like there needs to be something else that she does with her. And then we'll do the part where she gets up. Because like this part here, a lot of it is like has got some keys in there. There's not too many in betweens we need to add. When I'm looking at this section here, some of it's on like a 3. This is on a 4. This is on a 4. This is on a 4. This is maybe on an 8. Another 4. Another 8. So like we've only got a few in-betweens to like add in, and then it would be more like in all of the nuance, which would be quite nice. So I wanted to kind of remain in this pose, but as all these parts are happening, it's adding little textures to her arm, because I don't want her to just be standing here and this thing is like isolated. I want it to feel like it's part of her. So that part's definitely we're gonna like add some little nuances in her body as she's kind of like kind of thing. I'm just gonna start animating. And carrying on from where we left off yesterday. So we were essentially halfway through blocking the shots. I didn't have much time, many hours to put in yesterday, but I knew that I was going to carry on today. So yeah, just going to carry on from where we left off. I reckon we got about a third of the way through, maybe a little bit more than that, in terms of this section of blocking plus. But we did manage to get through this part here where she takes shots with the sniper. So we did this little part here, and then we started to rework some of the sniper stuff. So we had this little crank in the sniper, and then she comes out. I already want to add a key in here. There's a little bit of time where we're kind of on a 4 here, I think. Yeah, this is on a 4. So I can definitely add an in-between in here where we can begin to ease out the hand. And then I'll probably keep the elbow down. Elbow's gone really far out for some reason. Then it comes up, hits in here. And then again, I can add another in-between in there on 2s. So we're going to ease out now. and then that's when we knock sniper. And then this is where we need to add some more fidelity, really, because there's not much happening at this point here on her body. Like, there's no keys. We kind of just go into holding on and pulling up. So I can already see on this key here as well, it feels like there's a bit of an anticipation into the anticipation, where it feels a little bit off. So on this key here, I'm actually going to already have her hand holding on to this part here. So I think it's more this position from here to here. I'm not sure what I'm going to quite do yet with this hand gesture. So we need to come up with some hand gestures for what she's going to do and interact with the sniper through this section. But right now, we do have this change in her body pose, which I don't know if we necessarily want, because even though it looks better as a pose from an appeal perspective, it's a little bit more simple. I need to clean up some of these shapes, but as we're coming through, it does feel like she's leaning back here, and I'm not sure if we want to have her lean back just yet, or if we do, it's going to be very brief. So I'll have to play with that. But I'm going to create a key here, and then I'm going to experiment a little bit with how else she interacts with the sniper. It could be maybe that she flips something up, possibly, because like we have this component here that she could use maybe. So maybe she can flip that up. I'm trying to think what we could do. Like, she could press... I'm trying to think if she could press some buttons, possibly. But because it's so far away, I worry that that won't read. So that's why I'm kind of leaning toward maybe keeping it more broad. So there is also this little accent here. So this could be where she flips up the sniper flap. We're a little bit limited by what she can interact with, because it's the rest of the sniper is quite far away from her arm. But I can play around with some of the interaction a little bit in here. I'm also worried about that shoulder going a bit too far. And also she's getting quite off balance here. That's already feeling a bit better. So I could have it so that she flips it with her thumb, possibly. Or do I want to have it so that she cranks it all the way over the top? So she does something like this. And how would she hold that? Maybe with her thumb. So twist like this and then come over, but then it's harder to read again. We just got to kind of choreograph this a little bit more to the camera. So then this component here on this key is going to flap up. Like this. And I can pose her hand around that. So as we're coming through here, I could begin to slightly lead a little bit of her chest coming up. And then this is on the 2, so now we're easing in. So I definitely want to get the hand into an ease out position from the hit. It'll probably almost stay near enough in the same position as it was before. And we can have the head and the body begin to lead up. And then on this key here, the arm then begins to come through. Make sure the elbow is tucked down. And then that's when she's going to flip it up. Like that. So again, we're just getting those very clear beats. And then we have this extra key in here, which I'm going to delete because we don't need this anymore. We want to continue from this, which you will then move into this position here. So I need to rework some of this stuff here before we go any further, so that her head and her neck are going to ease out of this position. And then that's when we go into this key here. So this stuff here can ease out. It's mostly in the spine, her head, her neck, her shoulders, and her arm. So now we have a little bit more of a transition through there. Does feel like her chest doesn't need to come down so much. I might be able to have the hand begin to release a little bit more. And then her hand pose can already begin to come out. Now, I might add an extra key in here just to have this ease in a little bit more on that hand. And then this is again on the 2. So now we're going to ease out. Maybe the head can already begin to turn. And we can release the arm. So that's peeling off of that position there. Just keeping the neck connected a little bit more. Might have a little bit more time on this beat here. Just need to slightly tweak the timing on this part. So we can ease out the head. That feels a bit better. Now I just need to play around with the spacing here. I think this needs to go into a 1. With that hand coming in. Just so we read that little contact there. And then this is when we're going to begin to ease out on the push. So this is where it gets a bit broader. I think we can already begin to lead a little bit further back with the neck and the head. There's a little bit of offset in timing there now. So that the head slightly leads. Then she pulls. Now this is where the reference can possibly come in handy as well. So I'm going to turn that back on. Just to see if there's anything in here, just to understand the mechanic a little bit more. For the most part, a lot of the blocking is done. So it's more just if there's any information that might be useful, but there's a chance that there might not be. So this is the reference. Yeah, so she's keeping her weight quite far over screen left here. I actually am going to add an extra in between to ease in slightly, so that we favor her weight a little bit more over here. So as we're coming through, we do want to keep the sniper a little bit closer to her body. I'm gonna keep that quite tight as it comes in, but then keep the arm still supporting her. And then let's slightly delay that leg just a little bit. Then she's coming through. So there's definitely going to be a couple of in-betweens in here as we're now coming through. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. We're just favoring a little bit more of our weight over her right leg whilst the left one comes down. But again, in aid of the spacing of how the style was working, there's definitely going to be some transitions where they're quite punchy. So we're going to add a little bit of foot roll in here, but not too much. Keeping her arm attached at this stage. Definitely want to get a little bit more lead in her head here, just to continue to counter the balance. And then she's favoring her weight over screen right. As we come through, we can begin to twist her foot here. Just trying to also consider my lines of action. Still going to keep her arm attached to the elbow at this point, and then that comes in later. Then that's when it begins to let go here. So then there's another in between here as we begin to... We're still easing in, but we are going to begin to take this foot off the ground slightly. Keep the weight shifting to the right. So I'm actually leading this foot out a little earlier than the reference is doing, but then it will give us a little bit more support and contact in here. So by this key here, she's already down. Her hips look a bit disconnected here, so I'm just going to connect those back up. And then as we begin to ease in, yeah, it's going to come a little bit around to the right. I'm going to keep her stance low, and then it arcs up. A little bit of shifting to the weight still. Just slightly offsetting the weight on her chest. Now, I can initiate the head to turn first, and then it presents the arm, or do I have the head follow the arm? So then she's coming around like this, so that we're clearly tracking that, or it could be I'm coming up here and then I present. I think it's a little bit more dramatic if she does lead, to be honest. So I do quite like that the head comes up first. It just means in here, that head's got to come up and lead a little bit more here, which really would mean that the chest is also going to begin to come back up here too a little bit. Just slightly overshoot the head. And then we're easing in here. Getting a little bit of an arc. And just to sell the weight, I can actually have her spine. Because right now she's leaning very far forward, but all of the weight is technically on screen right. So in here, I might actually have her begin to arch her spine back and overshoot a little bit more. And then it's going to settle, just so we get a little bit more of that, like she's hoisting her weight back to then compensate for that lifting up the gun. And there's lots of different parts happening in this section, like a little intricacy that we can add as well. Got a couple of questions in here. How did I make the reference look like that in Maya? That's a good question, and I'm surprised it's taken so long for someone to ask this, because when I first saw this, it was the first question I saw. So there was an animator at Sony who I first saw this from. I believe, who was it? I think it might have been Will Robinson, or Robson, sorry. And they filmed their reference regularly, and then they put it into Runway AI, which is a free, there's a free version of it online on the website, and it has an AI generated green screen tool where you can select a person and then it'll auto roto them, and then it will use AI to like do that per frame, and then you can choose where you want to include or exclude things. So in this case, obviously I'm holding like an object, so you can say include the object, and of course it's more accurate the higher fidelity the image is. So in my case, you can see where the edges aren't perfect. That's because I was actually shooting quite far away because it's a full body shot. Even though it's filmed at quite a high frame rate on a quite high res, you can also see there's a lot of exposure in the image as well, and that's because there's a lot of light from the window bleeding behind me. So sometimes it can struggle with that stuff, but usually it's pretty good. So from there, you have a green screen version. Then I chuck it into Premiere, and then you use Ultra Key to key out the green, and then I just export that as a PNG sequence and bring it into Maya, and then you have like a green screened, like keyed out version, rotated version of your reference, and it's just on an image plane. So I took a class with you in AM. Oh no way. And I remember you were working on the music timing shots where the girl is swinging around fighting robots months ago. Is this one related? Similar practice with the music beats? Yeah, no, this is the exact same shot. A very long piece, but this is a different section of the same shot. So just for context, I'll play the full version of what we have. And yeah, then we can then you'll get like the full scope of what the shot is. But yes, this is that same shot that we were discussing back in AM. But yeah, it's really cool to see you in here, and hope things have been good since AM. Oh, I just thought you manually shot the reference next to a green screen. Yeah, that would be the more practical way of doing it, wouldn't it? No, it's a really useful tool. This obviously there's no sponsor here, but I can quickly show you. It's called runway.ml. It's this website here. And you just create an account. So you just press get started, create an account, and then it'll probably already sign me in, but you'll see that I have a whole bunch of reference in here. So if I just go to my dashboard, go to my projects, in here you can see that I have a bunch of different references, and you'll see that I have like the original clip here. And then you literally just click green screen, click your person, and then it will key it out for you. But I've got a whole bunch of stuff in here. Like this is another keyed out version of a shot. Once it plays, it takes a second to generate some stuff. But yes, that's the idea. It's a really good tool. And you actually might notice this if there's any big Spider-Verse fans out there that might have the Blu-ray version of the film. You'll see in a lot of those shots, even with like, you may even have noticed this in K-pop Demon Hunter as well. Some of the reference clips that have been coming out on Twitter recently, you'll notice some of those. The animators, when they're filming themselves, will have green screened versions of their backgrounds. So they look like they're in the shot. And they're using the exact same tool. I believe, I can't remember if it was Will who first discovered it or if it was Daniel Caballeros. I can't remember. But both incredible animators, and yeah, I know they use it actively as well, so it's a really, really useful tool. But yeah, it's really cool to see you, Alex. Yeah, things are good on my end. It's going to get very busy in the next few weeks. In just under 3 weeks now, I'll be getting married, so it's going to be pretty crazy and exciting, and yeah, really looking forward to it. But I'm getting in all of my streams now while I can before we have a break and we go on our honeymoon and stuff, and then obviously when we get back, I'll be back on it. But yeah, all good otherwise. I forgot about that sniper part at the beginning. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things. The song is slightly stuck in my head. Like I've obviously heard it 1,000 times at this point. It's kind of I think at one point it was a little bit too much, but then I've just kind of got numb to it, so it's not an issue now. The tool is called Runway. If you just type in I think it's runway.ml. But if you just type in Runway AI, it will come up, and then you can just create an account. Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate it. So we're coming through here. I do want to slightly... I'm now wondering how much of a moving hold. Like, there's a lot of intricacy happening to her body in here. So first things first, I can see that this is the final pose. So just on 2s, I'm just going to have this slightly ease in progressively. All the way through here on 2s. And then I can begin to add a little bit of the intricacy once I have the keys. So again, all in the style of what we were doing before on the study yesterday. We were looking at like the spacing, and obviously it's quite even. So you can see in here, I'm trying to keep her spacing quite even as we ease in through here. But then I will create a little bit of an arc, so I can look at my graph editor. I can see which is our left and right, which is the X, and I can tighten this up so that our spacing as we come through here, let's just tighten this so that we get a little bit of an arc in there. And then I might slightly get a bit of a delay on the chest, slightly coming back, and then that can settle in. So we're just adding, we can layer in the texture once we've got the main parts working. So we have the head coming up, it slightly overshoots, and then it's going to settle in. And then I can also layer in a little bit of the arm as well. So her left arm here, as that comes through, I could probably have, oops, wrong arm. I can probably have this slightly overshoot back. And then that's going to settle in. Again, I don't want to go too far because that's when it becomes too loose and it doesn't feel like it's in the anime style. So I've got to keep everything quite tight. So I'm just getting a little bit of a curl to the hands there. So I'm keeping it quite punchy and trying to have distinct beats for where certain parts of the body change. Now that I have these keys, I can look at what the actual sniper is doing, and I can try and add a little bit of like delay recoil on what the body is doing. And I'll start with the arm first because that's where a lot of the force comes from, and then I work my way outwards. So I can already see in here that sniper does slide up here. So then on this key, I can maybe have a little bit of the hand come up. And then it can come back down. And then we have this little part here come in, so now the arm can slightly drop. In here. I'm kind of doing this in screen space now, but that's also kind of like what you would do in 2D anyway, so that kind of works in my favor. I do want to get these little recoils that kind of happen in her body, so like as the arm comes down here, for instance, that can get a little bit of jitter. in the chest. So that comes down, then here, that needs to go to the left. And settle in. And then that's when it will settle back out. Maybe I can get a little bit of texture on the chest, a little bit to the left there. I can see the jacket's broken, by the way, for anyone with context. Like, Aaron, you might want to fix that. It's a pass I'm doing later, so I'm not worried too much about what the jacket's doing right now. But yeah, you can just see those little textures in there. I think that's helping. And then I can get a little bit of countering what the head is doing. Now, I do want to track what the actual arm is doing through this part. I'm wondering in here, if this part, if I can maybe give this a bit more emphasis, a little bit more contrast, where it feels like she has to throw the arm up a little bit more in here, just so we get a little bit more of a presentation of her, like, being like, kind of thing. Maybe it'll be too much, but I want to experiment with that. So in here especially, this arm needs to come down. And then we're going to bring the arm, it's going to drop slightly. And then as we come through here, the arm needs to remain dropped. And then I may need to lead to throw the chest back earlier there. So we get a bit more of an antic here. Then we're pulling up. Then here, we're going to lean her chest back. It might mean that we actually push up a bit higher. And then this arm is going to hold on for a bit longer. Just to kind of put it into place. To support the arm as it comes through. So it's coming up. Now here it's going to slightly overshoot. And then that just gives it a little bit more weight. So it's going to slightly hang just for a second. Then it drops down. There. So then we get the drop. You see that little accent in there? Yeah, it's feeling pretty good. There's a little bit of that texture going on now, and you kind of feel it pop up. Now, when that weight drops here, there, do I actually have it recoil back down again? So she steps up here. There, so there's a little drop on her weight, and then it comes back up. Just makes it feel a little bit more engaged. It feels like there's a bit more weight in there. Again, I'm trying to keep it quite snappy so that it doesn't feel like it's too organic. But I'm trying to add these little textures that just kind of make it feel a little bit more believable and tangible at the same time. I feel like we just need to get a lead. This pose to me just feels a little bit awkward. I think it needs to be a little bit more. There you go, just straighten out. Yeah, that feels a bit better. Yeah. I'm just going to play blast this because it's all well and good me just trying this stuff out. But then if it doesn't feel right when I play it, how do you know, right? So let's just turn this stuff on. Give this a play blast. So this is version 39. I reckon as we're going through these details now, we're going to have a little bit more iterations, like versioning up on our like animation files. So let's do a prediction. What to get through Blocking Plus before we tie everything down and polish it? How many versions do you reckon it will take to complete Blocking Plus? So it was approximately version 34 when we finished blocking. I'm curious to see if people think it will take longer or if it will go faster. Let's have a play. Now, there's something about it that feels a little too sharp for me. Especially the antic here. Those little recoveries, I still feel like it can have more weight to it. Another 20 versions. Version 45 because you're a madman at Blocking Plus. I love that. I love your optimism towards the process, man. Yeah, we'll see. I think 45 is definitely maybe overly optimistic. I think I'll definitely take less versions, but who knows? You might be right on the money there. I mean, we're already at 39, so you reckon within the next like 5-6 versions? I don't think so. I reckon at least, I think you might be close, Carl, there. Maybe another 20. So we're probably looking in like from this point onwards, maybe like version 55, something like that. I reckon. But we'll see. Like, I definitely think I'll get through the sections faster, but because it takes a while to like block it out, I definitely take longer in blocking for sure. But then there is quite a lot of nuance and intricacy to this stuff, so yeah, we'll see. But like I say, I'll also be versioning up more often because there's more intricacy, so it might end up balancing out. Maybe it'll be like 60. Who knows? So I know with this section here, this part here through there, this definitely felt too tight. So some of this posing, I need to ease out the body earlier, in other words. I reckon this needs to happen earlier, so this key should be here. So I'm just giving it a bit more time to ease in to this antic. Which obviously has implications on what this arm does now. Because that's going to have to release earlier too. And then I might be able to release that hand a little earlier. The fingers there. A little bit more time there to ease in. And then this definitely felt fast. So I wonder... This whole section here did feel like it needed more time. So I can probably take away some of the keys. Or like, not take away some of the keys, but stretch them out. So this felt too fast. So let's delay that by a frame. Let's delay these by a frame. Just slightly giving it a bit more time to transition through there. Because I don't think it's necessarily the spacing that's the issue. I think it's more the timing. It felt too quick. I'll try with that first, and if I need to compensate spacing, I can. Spacing is easier to fix than timing. At least for me. With some of these nuances in here, I might be able to delay. So for instance, this might come in later. Just give myself an extra 2 frames there. To try and push this stuff back. Let's see how that feels, just by adding that little spacing and timing there. Again, this is where it's going to be a case of playing it back and forth just to see how it feels. So we'll go from here. How you been, Alex? Haven't heard from you for a while. I recently looked at your profile because I was editing our acting masterclass workshop that we did a while ago, and I'm now going to put it on Gumroad so that it's available to other people as well, at what I think would be a fair price. But obviously you were asking a ton of questions during that workshop, so I'm making sure that as I go through and edit that no one's faces or voices are part of the recording, so that it's, you know, accessible for everyone. I'll still have your questions in the piece, in the product, but you won't hear or see you, so no one will know it's you. But because of that, I was like, oh, I wonder what Alex is doing these days. I mean, that feels better. It still feels a bit fast. Especially this little recovery. These little steps. And I think the range of motion might be a bit too big as well. So what I can do is she comes up. These ups and downs for sure need to be reduced. So all of this stuff here needs to favor our end key. So I can just scale this to the right. So there's less range of motion. There's still the intricacies in there, but there are less of it. And then I think we've probably shifted our weight too far to the left here. So I can also take this and just scale this to the right. Which means I will need to tweak some of the spacing on the arm. Just need an extra in between in there on that hand. There you go. That feels better. I'm getting a little bit bothered by how that tangents here. So I just want to keep that silhouette a bit cleaner. Better. And then I just want to check the timing and spacing on our ups and downs through here. So in an ideal scenario, this is going to take a little bit longer just to give it a bit of weight. I know I did tighten the translation X here, but I am now thinking, as this comes through, what if I slow this down? I can still offset the timing, so this takes a little bit longer to ease in. But then our ups and downs also, on this down, we hold in the down, and then this still rises up a little softer. This gives it a little bit more weight. I'll see how that plays now. I think this is going to look really cool once we layer in like the jacket and the hair flapping in the wind as well. Also, this is, again, some of the stuff I haven't even vocalized, but it's stuff I'm thinking about. But I think compositionally as well, I would like to make the background a little bit more distinct. So I want it to make it feel like she's high up. So I might still keep this scaffolding on the screen right, but as for the background, I want to expose more in the back so you feel the scale of her. So she's not just going to be against a flat wall here, but she's actually going to be like on the top of a spire, if you will. So we might see a little bit more background. I don't want to do it so that you see like a big, massive horizon behind her. I still want to feel like there's a big scale, like it's a huge city, but I want you to feel like she's on top of the building. And right now it just feels like she's somewhere halfway up. So just to kind of give it a bit more context that you feel like she's high up, I want to kind of see it a little bit just to give a bit more of that parallax in the back. But also then the wind will be justified. You've been good. You've been taking a break from anime for a few months. And then just did the 48-hour competition. Going to be going to a premiere for one of them tonight. Oh, really cool. How does the film competition work? Is this like a live action thing, you mean? I'm really curious to see what you've shot. Oh yeah, Alex brings incredible questions. Like, there was no way I was gonna take that stuff out of the masterclass. I was like, this is the stuff. Any question? I wanted it to kind of be like, with that masterclass, the workshops, however you want to phrase it, it's more workshops. But with the workshop, I wanted it to be like those who wanted to pay up front to kind of be involved in the workshop itself directly live gets the opportunity to then ask all these questions, like learn from it and ask directly things that can benefit them. And then I was going to release it later for anyone who's more interested, who, you know, they can still ask questions. All they'd have to do is message me, but they won't get that direct feedback. So yeah, obviously it's been a bit of time as well since I've made that workshop, so it will be a little bit like the cost of it will be a bit lower than it initially was, but I feel like having that direct feedback and the responses asked for you live is definitely something that was beneficial. So yeah, I'll try and figure out a fair price point for that stuff. Yeah, exactly. It does feel like she's in the middle of a building, right? Yeah, that's pretty cool. That feels better. There's like a slight level of jank to it that I kind of like, because it feels a bit more hand drawn, like it's not perfect and pristine. I think when it feels too calculated, it starts to feel 3D. Like even when you look at stuff like, I don't know, K-pop Demon Hunter or Spider-Verse, sometimes you can tell it was splined and then they've hit it on twos. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a very deliberate art choice. But if you want it to feel more handcrafted, like there's level of imperfections, sometimes you need to add those imperfections back in. And there is some stuff that does that too. I mean, you know, sometimes they do that with line work or like the way they shading. It's the same way with like the Lego movie. They added like the models weren't perfect, right? They had like little dents in them and they had like fingerprints to show these imperfections. And you can almost tell with even some of the animation as well, it felt like it was being moved by someone's hands. Like the spacing wasn't always perfect and that kind of stuff. So I definitely want to lean into that. And I think this is kind of hitting that mark. It may not be exactly what I'm looking for, but it's close. Yeah, local 48 hour, they give you a prompt, a genre, a required prop, a line of dialogue, and then you get 48 hours to make it. Oh, that's really cool. Did you have just like your friends join you to like act it out, or like I'm really curious to see, obviously well, I guess my question is, will we be able to see it someday when it's out of the competition? And if so, you should definitely put that online. I'd love to see it, man. So yeah, with this stuff now, we've added this little section in here. Now it's the part where her arm comes in and we need to see these recoils. So she comes up. So we have this down. In here, I do want to have the hand come up for sure. So again, we feel the weight as it all slots in. May get a very subtle antic on the body. So now that's all coming up. The little antic in there. And then I'm going to slightly twist the chest to connect. Then it's going to hit down. Now, this is happening a bit too early because this is where it slots in. So this needs to be delayed. So I'm going to ease this out now. So everything slots in. The head can already come down. But the body I want to slightly delay. And then this geometry I need to clean up slightly. Just have all these little components and strands poking out. And then that's when her body's going to snap in. So this is going to be on ones, this section, just because I want to add that level of texture where you really feel all of it have those separate components. So her arm's going to drop down. And then her body comes down into it. Just countering and get a little bit of that twist. Neck comes forward. And then get a little bit of follow through in the forearm there. And then I want to get a little bit of an ease out on the hand. So this hits down, we're easing out, now we're easing back in. So then we're going to direct the head. And then we're hitting into this pose here as it all stretches out. Now I want to do a slight alteration of this, where as we ease into this, I want to have her whole body kind of engage a little bit more and twist into it. So she's going to twist her chest. Don't want to go too far. I'm trying to find that balance. And then here, I want it to feel like there's a bit of follow through as we're easing in. So I'm just going to have this all ease in and I'll slightly offset as we go. So this is still easing in. So now this has a little bit less weight to it, these parts. These are all like going to have wires attached, but at this point this is her whole arm, right? So she's going to have some strength in there. So it comes through. Now I want to slightly delay the chest. And then that's following in later. Now I might be able to add a little bit of that. So we have the initial lead pull here. Then around here, maybe I'll have it slightly counter back. So in other words, we slightly tilt here, but then push her to the left. So then I can ease into that instead. Going to the graph editor. Make sure I save this before I break anything. So we have it initially come forward here. Then these keys, I want these to ease in to our new pose. Just to get that little bit of counter. Now, do I ease into the rotations tighter? I probably do. Yeah, just so that we get a little bit of that counter in there. Like it feels like the balance is a little bit better and it helps with the weight. So this needs to lead in early. So it feels like it pulls her. Feels a little bit rigid. So I think the rotate in here needs to happen earlier. It's mostly the Z I'm looking at. There you go. That feels better. And then I can slightly offset what the arm is doing. That comes down. Drops here, comes through. Getting a little bit of twist in there. Just trying to get those little offsets on the arm. Trying to keep the silhouettes clean. That feels better. A little bit of a stick there in the spacing. Just tracking the spacing there. That's better. Then the head comes through. I could tilt at the head. That's pretty badass. Hell yeah. That feels a bit more like an anime trope. And then as it comes back in, we had to add some keys in here as well. Let me save that. Nah, that's really cool. I remember at college we had to do some assignments which were movie based, and I had some really cringy one, which was really funny. There's actually two really funny ones. I have created short films before, but only for like college assignments, and they're really funny. Like, they're funny in a way that they're not supposed to be funny. They're just bad. But one's on YouTube actually. I think I've made it private, but it is actually on my Animate with Aaron channel. But yeah, there's one which was in college when I was maybe 17, and it was a horror-based one, and I wanted it to be filmed in a church, but it was all like satanic, and of course you need to ask for permission to film somewhere. So I had to like semi-lie to my local, like I come from the middle of nowhere, and I went to my local church in the middle of the countryside in England, and had to basically, I just went to like I think it was on the Vickers, and basically went over to them and was like, hey, we're filming this short film, do you mind if we film on your premise? I gave him no context as to what the film was, and he was like, oh yeah, sure, of course, it would be happy for you to, it'd be really cool to see what you come up with, and like, yeah, let us know, like contact us and show us what you've made. And I'm like, in my head I'm thinking, you're not gonna want to watch this. How would you like Studio Library? I've created my own version of it with a few more features that I think would be nice to have. Oh, awesome. Yeah, you'll please elaborate on what those features are. I mean, I do like it. I'm curious to see what you've added to make it better. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there are things that I might find better. I mean, without having to use a mirror table might be quite nice. So that it automatically recognizes mirroring just by default. If you create a pose, you don't have to do the mirror version of it. That would be nice. If you really want a fancy tool, then similar to Studio Library, but on a whole other level, is if you were able to use a tool that, this is what Sony has, so it's called Pose Grab, and basically you can highlight any shot, any Maya file, and without opening it, you can scrub through the timeline in an interface, and wherever the pose is, you can select your rig and it will detect where that rig is in the scene, and then it will bring that pose from that shot, what you've highlighted on that specific frame, and it will bring it into your shot. No need to mirror table, it just has it's just name based. Yeah, very cool. That's great. Applying onto anim layers. Yeah, that's useful. For sure. Yeah, it's searching for a .ma, and it just has all the animation, like the values of the rig, like within the, yeah, exactly, within the Maya file, and it's taking that information and bringing it in to your current MA. So in here, we have this part where it all comes in, and then she comes around and snaps in. So I have the actual beats of the arm, but I don't have the intricacy. So there's a little beat in here where it's all coming out. I'm going to add some more detail to the fingers and all the wires in here. I kind of want it to feel like it's all slightly drifting. So there's like the parts are slightly floating in the air a little bit. So it goes kind of thing. Right now it's all static. So I'll do that a little bit after, once I've got the main beats working. But in here, I just need to add a little bit of a moving hold before it all comes in. So this is probably going to be on 3s. So I have this key here. It might be nice just to get a little bit of a follow through or something on the root. So I'm just adding this little move and hold in here. So now this is on and ease in. There you go, we got that little move and hold. And now it's all going to begin to come in. So as this snaps, I definitely want to get a little bit of recoil. A little bit of texture on the shoulder. So now this is all going back and forth. I'm going to add these little textures in here. As these all kind of snap into place. And now this is where we're going to begin to ease out. This is on 2s again. So I'm going to lead with the head. Thanks for the follow. So in here, I definitely have the arm, or keep the arm straight. I'm going to snap this arm into position. Get a little bit of overlap if I just get a little bit of drag in there. Now, I don't want to twist so early. Then it's coming in. And then there's a little overshoot in there that I'm going to add. I'm going to overshoot the head. So I want to try and... I have the arm coming through here. I want to slightly overshoot it. So this is the overshoot on the chest. There you go. Get those little overshoots, and then I can add a little bit of offset on the arm. A little bit of follow through. So I can drag the hand here, come through, drag again. Then as we come up, we're gonna have a few keys of settle. Just adding a little move and hold. And then I want that to be on the 3 rather than the 2. Slightly overshoot the forearm. There we go. I want to see how that looks, and then she's obviously going to go into the big antic and run. So let me just save that. But it lets you scrub a window based on that search the MA file. Yes. I can't imagine how it's doing that without opening the Maya scene. Yeah, I don't know how it works either. I found it fascinating. I do wonder if it's all part of a pipeline, so maybe there's like a published version of the file, or it can, maybe when you save, it's like already created a cached play blast or something, because it already knows the camera as well. It knows which is your primary camera, so when you're looking through the shot and you're scrubbing, it's looking at probably the latest publish. So maybe you would need to create some kind of like pipeline system that it detects, oh, okay, so I'm looking through this camera, I can scrub through this timeline. It's probably using some kind of caching system. I'm honestly not sure how it works. It probably has like a play blast that's correlating to a Maya scene as well. So as you're scrubbing, it's actually scrubbing a video file that's correlating to the same frames in the Maya scene. So it will say, oh, on that rig, on this frame, based on this play blast, pick up that frame. Maybe. Again, I'm just making this up. It's all speculation. Let me just do these couple in-betweens, and then I'll play blast it. So yeah, we can already see we're going to get some crazy... some crazy gimbling and that kind of stuff going on, which was completely to be expected. So this foot is going to snap into this position here. Slight shift to the left. This leg needs to stay at the back. Now this arm, we need to stay in place. Or do I have it drag? Yeah, probably best to have it drag. That arm can get that pose coming through. Now I do want to get a bit more of a lead in here. So this chest position is going to begin to lead in. That's better. And then I want to make sure the head leads the action. That's feeling better. And then I definitely want to add an in-between in here because we have this leg passing through and we just don't read it right now. So this is probably going to have to be on ones, most likely. But definitely this key here, we're going to need an in-between. So this one's going to come down to the left. Sorry, 1 second, my alarms again. Sorry, you're going to get used to that on streams when I'm working during the day. So we're coming through. That leg's already in position. So now this is our passing. So I definitely want to lead this in. And drag the arm slightly here, so we get an overshoot slightly here. Then it's coming through. Probably still get a little bit more lead in the chest. Just break up the body a bit more. There we go. Now, I'm wondering if I might be able to cheat the timing. So that if I add an extra key in here, then on this key, on this foot placement, maybe this foot's already in position. Then this allows this foot to already come off the ground earlier. Just so we get the ease out. It might be too quick. Possibly. But we'll play it. See how it feels. There's also a bit of spacing locking out there. And then that's when she goes off into the jump, etc. Cool. So what I'm going to do is that we can play blast this now. More detail involved in all of the in-betweens that we're creating. So this stuff, these sections where there's like more time happening in one pose take a little bit longer to do. But once we get into like the action, which will probably be in the next stream or two, maybe even the next stream, we'll see how this plays in a moment, we should be able to go through the mechanics quite quickly. Because there are fewer in-betweens, it's more contrast, so there's more creative decisions being made, I would say. It's a little less nuanced than what we're doing here. But yeah, then we should have some you'll see a bit more of like the mechanics being played through. And it'll be a bit more potentially entertaining to watch all the changes happen, so that could be fun. But yeah, this is the new version of the first section with the blocking plus in its current state that we've been doing today. So I'll play this through and we'll see again how it looks. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think the screen left arm needs to be more rigid. I think that's what's throwing me off. It's a little bit too overlappy. And there's a couple of keys in there that are kind of like little strays that just need to have ease ins and outs a little bit more. Like, for instance, let's have a look. Sorry if the music also gets annoying for you guys as I loop it through. It is important to hear it. So there's a key there. So this just needs tying in a bit more. And then some of this stuff in here on her screen left arm definitely needs simplifying. I think this one worked. So it's this stuff in here. This is fine. This could already be tighter. So I'm just going to really tighten this stuff up. So that's almost barely moving at all. Like, this overlap in here is better off not having. Just better off keeping it tight. Again, it kind of plays into keeping it simple and not adding too much fidelity, because then it takes away from the like the 2D feeling of it. So for instance, in here there's a little bit of an up that's happening on the arc, so I can take that out. And then spine here definitely needs to ease out more. Let's try that. I won't play blast the whole section, we'll just do it from where we reveal her. I think I want it to just be faster. Like, we need a longer beat in here. Bum, bum, bum. I wonder, because there's a long time in this suspended part here. So I think what we can actually do is hold in the hand pose for longer in this part here. And then this part here, we can spend where it goes bong. Instead of right now, the beat of the accent happens on the jump. I think we can actually happen when she initiates. So in other words, this key happens later. And therefore these will as well. So some of this stuff, we're going to slightly delay it. I'll put it on 2s for now and see how it feels, if it feels too slow or fast. But I do want her to initiate. So like around here. Which might mean I can get a little bit more impact in here. So she comes through. Da, da, da. Just tightening up the poses. There we go. Clearing the silhouettes. Dun dun dun. Just playing around with the beats. And then that's when it goes. So that's when we're going into it now. Let's try that. We're slowly getting there, guys. Once we get, again, like I say, the timing is the trickiest part of this shot, honestly. Once we get the timing right, we can compensate the spacing and the clarity and the beats and all that kind of stuff. But it's, I have confidence in like pushing poses and clean them up. I don't really consider many of these poses fully cleaned yet. We'll go through and do a cleanup pass near the end. But I do want to get like the main mechanics working. Like there's lots of different techniques we can use. to clean up later. Right, let's try this again. Yeah, that feels better. I almost want it to be faster, you know? Just to really sell it. That dun 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 dun. Yeah, the impact, it makes it feel like, oh shit, okay, we're in for something cool here. So I kind of want to tighten that up even more. I wonder if I can get away with not using this in between. And then might need to be a little earlier. It doesn't help right now. That we need an extra in between here, really, to sell the action. So I can try playing with that. So what I can do is I'll put this... We can push away. We're already getting into a little bit of the mechanics, but that's fine. I'm not too concerned about that right now. For some reason, that leg is doing some funky stuff. There we go. This is where it's in IK, and normally I would put in FK, but I'm just working with what I've already got. Let's keep that leg pushing away. Arch the spine back. I want to swing this arm through tighter. Which means, as we're coming up here, we need to add another in between. Which means the whole pose is now going to be higher. Again, this is where I have to play around with some of the trajectory. I want to keep that foot. That can begin to peel away now. This leg should already be coming up. Again, not sure what that knee is doing. But this is where we can get a bit of follow through on some of the forearm elements. So at this point here, I can keep the arm straight. Then it comes through. And then we're kicking out here. So I need to check how many keys there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that works. I can do that on 2s. Or I can do it on 2 3s. 1, 2. Let's try it. 1, 2. So this is our in between. So I'll ease out. Well, let's just go halfway between, and then I'll bring it up, which will give us the ease out. So I want to keep this leg in, because this is the accent where it goes dong, is on the leg kicking outwards. I'm going to keep the arm poses as tight as I can for as long as possible. Maybe a little bit of follow through in here. Might be able to slightly bring them up. Just get a little bit of that compression. Oops, wrong knee. So this gives you an idea of how we will follow like with the next couple of streams. So then in here, I can just use in-betweens, and then we can just clean it up. Just track the arc. Again, it's quite pose-centric. So a lot of these are going to feel like the same pose, but we're tracking the path because we want to really feel the distinct beats come through. So there's going to be a little ease out here on that foot, and then it kicks through. And then this arm we want to keep back for longer still. So these two coming around is the beat. Now I do want to make sure that we do get some change in her spine through this, so that she doesn't feel too static. Which is going to be part of the challenge. It's like, how much of the pose do you preserve? Yeah, we'll play that. Let's see how it feels. Loving this animation style, to be honest. It's helpful seeing the concepts broken down in 3D. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's still something that I'm learning as well. Like, I did the poses, which at that point, for the most part, is a conventional workflow. Like, there's nothing distinct in there that's like, this is anime. But when you get into the movement style, that's the part that's tricky. And one thing that you'll notice, like when I was breaking down the Akira stuff the other day, is it's very pose-centric. It's very tight and quite snappy. And then like there are moments later where it's like, when it's more loose in the mechanic stuff, where it's more subtle, they do, like, the spacing is quite linear, as we've discussed. But when we get into like the mechanics, like the actual broad action stuff, it's very pose-centric, and it's a lot of like just hitting a really cool pose, then like translating within it, and there's maybe a couple of ease-ins to get that nice rhythm, that nice like feeling of flow going through. But a lot of it is like very pose-centric and very punchy. So that's what I'm trying to achieve. And And yeah, I think once we get into like the really broad stuff, that's going to be the interesting to see if it works. One thing it is probably also worth mentioning is I'm going to be using like a screen space matcher, which initially I was going to use the Pratt Bros one, but just so happens that at perfect timing we actually have a new screen spacer, which just dropped, which is going to be really useful, and I think it's a little bit more versatile than the previous one. Well, it definitely looks more versatile from the demos I saw. It was called Tusify. I'll just grab it now. So it's this. I'm sure some people have already heard of this. It just come out recently. Sorry. There go, an alarm. But yeah, you can screen space match with this new tool. So yeah, thank you, Asan, for dropping that. I'll definitely be using it, and I'll contribute a little bit towards you there as well. But yeah, I am a bit tight for time now. So what I'll do is I'll play the Play Blast, and then we'll have to call it there. Nice. That feels fun. Yeah, I'm happy with that. It's nice and punchy, hitting those poses. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming along. I really appreciate every time you tune in. It means a lot to me. And if you don't already, please do follow and subscribe.